going on, guys? Time for the weekly shop update. It's about 1:30 in the morning, Friday morning. So I'm actually maybe just a little bit early this week, but I got quite a bit going on this weekend. I was out here in the shop doing some cleanup and knocking out a couple of little odd projects, which maybe I'll show you here before the camera shuts off, maybe not. But figured I'd go ahead and just sit down, take a break, and before I head in, I'll do the shop update for you. And really not a lot to update in as far as different projects and shop happenings are concerned. One thing I will show you, I posted on the Instagram, I did get some Riley knife and tool stickers in, which I'm pretty happy about. I'm going to include, one or two of these with each order from now on. Anything I sell or that people buy from me, I'll try to throw some of those in. And like I said, if anybody wants just the stickers, maybe you've been following me for a while or you have some of my stuff already, let me know, send me a message, maybe even throw me $1 or so, and I'll get some envelopes and some stamps and send some stickers out to you. And if you already spent a lot of money on me, I probably won't even charge you, but we'll work something out. Let me know. Better yet, buy something from me and I'll throw some in for free. So how about that? Other than that, still doing a little bit with the heat treat oven. I've actually got some ITC 100. It's a refractory coating coming tomorrow. So I'm actually going to take everything back apart, lay the bricks out and coat them. And what that is, ITC 100 is basically like an aluminum based refractory coating. You put inside kilns or forges, or anything you're going to be heating up, and it basically just increases your reflection of heat in your chamber. It reflects heat a lot more efficiently and effectively than just raw fire brick or ceramic wool or refractory that you typically see in like a forge or a kiln. And in some cases, guys even put it in their forges if they can't get up to welding temps, and they actually see an increase not only in heating speed but in heating temperatures. And it's just a neat product. It's a little pricey. It's about $50 for just a little pint, but that'll cover about 11 or 12 square feet if I'm not mistaken, which is more than enough for what I need. And it's not even that I need it, but I just want to see what it does. If it increases my efficiency at all, I think it'll be worth it. Not that it's necessarily bad, but I am curious if it'll maybe eliminate that temperature swing, the 5 degrees. I'm also going to do a couple other things, like clean my thermocouple first, see what that does. But I also want to see if maybe it'll cool down that outer shell a little bit as well, or keep it cooler for longer. Not that it's bad now. It's only getting up to a couple hundred degrees or so after running for a couple hours. But I did read one instance where some glass makers, I believe it was, they put it inside their industrial ovens that they were using and saw like a 30 or 40 degree temperature drop on their outer shells. So I'm just curious, maybe more than anything, but I don't think it's a bad thing, and I'd like to see what happens. So in my opinion, it's worth $50 just to try it out. And if it doesn't do anything, oh well, at least I know, right? So that's that. One thing I did want to kind of talk about or reminisce about a little bit, as I was building this heat treat oven, I was kind of thinking about when I first got into knife making. This was back probably 2008, 2009. I really kind of started diving into things. And it's kind of funny thinking about when I built my first heat treat oven. And actually, I kind of built 3 things right away. One was a no-weld grinder sander. One was a heat treat kiln or heat treating oven. The other was an electric etching machine to put my maker's mark on. And besides that, I figured if I had those 3 things, I'd have a pretty decent leg to stand on, as far as getting started. As far as other tools, I really didn't have hardly anything. I think maybe, well, I had the Shopsmith here, My dad bought that for me, had a guy he was working with trying to get rid of it. And I had just bought this house maybe a month earlier. He said, I'll buy that for my son there since he just bought a house. He probably needs some kind of tools just to get started on some different projects and whatnot. So he bought that. And I actually used that for quite a bit of the building process of my no-weld grinder sander, which is kind of funny. I think I bought like a $20 angle grinder from Menards tool shop brand, just a real piece of junk. I used that as well as like a hacksaw to cut my square tubing for my no-weld grinder. I used the disc grinder on the Shopsmith to kind of deburr and square everything up. I used the drill press to drill the holes. I think I also had like a little cheap Ryobi corded drill. It's a piece of junk. Just real basic minimal tools. But like I said, this was about 12 years ago. There weren't nearly the resources there are today as far as suppliers, tools. As far as belt grinders, back then you really just had KMG, Bader, Burr King, the Wilton Square Wheel. I think Jet made one. The Craftsman 2x42 or 2x48 or whatever it is. That was a big one. I think Kalamazoo was another option. Grizzly might have been making theirs at that time, their knife making grinder. But kind of as far as homemade grinders went, you had the EERF grinder or the grinder in the box kit guys were making. And then you had the no-weld grinder and I think a KMG clone. There really weren't a whole lot of other options. And, at the time, the no-weld grinder kind of seemed like maybe the most accessible. I didn't have a welder at the time, nor access really to a machine shop. And it just seemed like a much more accessible and straightforward option. So I got the plans for that, started piecing stuff together, over time, getting the various sizes and pieces of steel. KMG was like one of the only places you could get wheels from, or Beaumont Metalworks, I should say, through Midwest Knife Supply or USA Knife Maker. I don't think even the Knife Dogs forum was a thing yet. You had Blade Forums, the Shop Talk section, which is kind of where I first got down my first rabbit hole for knife making. I actually didn't even know making knives was really a thing anymore if you weren't a blacksmith or you didn't have like a multi-million-dollar machine shop, like a Benchmade or a Spyderco or somebody like that. I didn't know guys were making their own knives. And I think what actually happened, I got kind of sidetracked one day. I was looking up something about a folding knife or a fixed blade I was interested in, and somehow got sidetracked on a thread about homemade belt sanders or belt grinders. And I was kind of curious, like, what's this about? What are these guys making? This like a weird 2x72 inch belt. What is that? I was familiar with like 6x48s or 36-inch belts or this or that, from woodworking and stuff. And I was curious, what in the world is a 2-inch belt grinder? What are you going to do with that? And I got down that rabbit hole and saw where guys were making their own knives. And I mean, it was like in guys' garage shops or like tool sheds out in the back, like little 6x8 tool sheds or 6x10. Guys were making them like in their apartment kitchens. I mean, I was just blown away. I had no idea this was even a thing. So I got down that rabbit hole. And then, of course, I'm looking at the belt grinders. I'm thinking, well, I can do that. And my interest in knives was already like kind of at a peak level. So I figured, I really would like to make one. Let's see what's out there. So I think I ordered like Wayne Goddard's $50 knife shop book. I ordered Bob Lovelace's How to Make Knives. And I forget who the other co-author on that was at the time. I think I found a PDF of David Boy's book. And I kind of started gathering, info from that. I started scouring the different knife forums, which there weren't many at the time. There was like the Knife Network, there was knifeforums.com, bladeforums.com were like the main three that I looked at. And along with that research, I saw where guys were making their own heat treat ovens. And there was really only like one or two, like really not even very good, but one or two resources where a guy kind of showed how he made one. And then a couple other guys kind of showed their take on it. And there really wasn't a whole lot of info. I mean, YouTube wasn't a thing. Again, this is 12 years ago. Google wasn't nearly what it was today. And there really wasn't a whole lot in terms of suppliers, you know, as far as getting materials, getting information. I think there was Auber Instruments for PID controllers. I want to say, what is it, Duralite, which I actually just bought my element from them. I think they were a thing back then. They had a real basic website that was actually, kind of had to like click on one link and then like find another one that was kind of hard to find. It was very unintuitive to be able to find the elements page to buy the Kanthal wire. It wasn't like you click a drop down box on the home page like it is now. You kind of had to click around a little bit and find the stuff you needed. And, you know, there were just like a lot of hoops it seemed like to jump through to get your information, to get the tools you needed, the supplies you needed. And I finally pieced enough together to build the sander. You know, I got the wheels, I got the steel, got the bolts and the nuts. And I think I cut most of the steel with an angle grinder. I squared it up and deburred it on the Shopsmith that my dad bought me. And just really worked way harder than I probably needed to, certainly than I would have liked to. But, you know, I did what I had to do. I got the grinder built. And at first I actually hooked it up to the Shopsmith's motor. I put the drive wheel on one of the drive shafts and kind of clamped it all up and used the Shopsmith to drive it for a little while until I finally found a motor I could afford. And that was another thing, just finding an electric motor was just a job in and of itself, trying to find a horse and a half, you know, 1700-ish, between 17 and 1800 RPM motor with a 5/8 shaft. That was really hard to do. I finally found one. I think it was like an hour and a half away on Craigslist. The guy wanted $75. I jumped in the car. I had four $20 bills in my pocket. I get there. I asked him, "Do you have change for 420s?" He says, "No, I don't." I was like, "Well, here's $80 then. Thanks for the motor." So it was like a 3-hour round trip to get this motor at least. You know, finally got it going. Couldn't have been happier with that. And then I turned my attention towards finishing this heat treat oven, which I think at the time I got like the controllers, the relays. I got a project box, the biggest one Radio Shack sold. Just barely crammed everything in that. And had the element, but I needed the bricks. I knew I needed K23 insulating fire bricks. And again, at the time, there really weren't any online suppliers, or if there was, they wanted a lot of money to ship the number of bricks I needed. And I just didn't want to pay, you know, $300-400 or $200 or $300 or whatever it ended up being to ship bricks across the country and get here ended up broken or whatever. But I do live in northern Indiana and around a lot of steel mills or industrial companies that use ovens, boilers, furnaces, you name it, places that would use these insulated fire bricks. So I actually grabbed the phone book, believe it or not. This is how far ago this was, how long ago. Grabbed the phone book, turned back into the yellow pages, and there weren't really any pottery supplies. There weren't any glass making studios, anything like that. But there were a lot of refractory companies, whether they built furnaces, repaired them, supplied for them. So I started cold calling anybody that had refractory in their name. And I think I got 5 or 6 down the line asking if anybody had these. A lot of people didn't really know what I was talking about or acted like they didn't care to know what I was talking about. Finally got a hold of one guy, turned out to be the owner of this building and repair refractory company. They built industrial sized kilns or ovens. And I asked him, can you please help me out? I'm looking for just a couple of cases, maybe couple dozen or 30 some odd bricks of K23 insulating fire brick. He says, yeah, I know what that is, and I do have some. Tell you what, I think I have some left over, just what you need. Meet me here this time, this place, and I'll let you have them for what I pay for them. So, I said, thank you, sir, I appreciate it. I ended up meeting where the guy asked. I think I pulled up the directions on MapQuest. Still remember that. It's like in the middle of nowhere, a couple towns over, kind of in the middle of this cornfield, kind of like industrial complex. And I pull up, there's like nobody else around, there's no other cars. This guy pulls up. Again, it turns out he was the owner of the company. We go into this dark building. He climbs up this ladder into like what looks like a hay loft, or like this mezzanine, and I follow him up there, just this rickety like wooden ladder. And he's got a couple of like old, really dusty boxes. They look like they've been sitting there for 20 years. He says, well, here's the insulating brick, this is what you need. Looks like I have just enough. I'll sell you just these couple cases. It was like 30 bricks, I think. And here's a couple of cutoffs, you can have these. Took out my checkbook, wrote him a check for what he wanted. I think it was like 130 or 150 bucks for the 30 bricks, which wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. And I took him home. Like I said, I couldn't have been happier. So the only thing I needed after that, I think, was the refractory mortar. The way I designed that original oven, I needed to mortar the bricks together for it to be stable enough in the configuration I was using. There were like nobody could sell me nobody knew what refractory mortar was. It seemed like they were all like regular like paving companies or like fireplace builders that used like hard brick. Finally got a hold of a place a couple towns north of here. They had what I needed, and it was kind of pricey, but I went there, got a little like gallon bucket of this refractory mortar that you mix yourself. Soak the bricks in some water, like the guy told me. He says, listen, if you're going to mortar these together, you got to put them in water till they stop bubbling and let them soak for an hour, or it's just going to suck all the moisture out of your mortar and they're not going to hold together. And one other thing that was kind of funny, by the way, this guy's asking me, what do you need these for? This is like a really small quantity. I'm used to dealing with truckloads of these things, like pallets full. What do you need only 30 bricks for? That's not even big enough to build like a pizza oven or something. Because, guys do that quite a bit. And I said, actually, I'm getting into knife making. And I want to build a little benchtop kiln. And this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. I saw where some guys were doing this. And he's like, oh, that'll never work. It's like, you're out of your mind. You're wasting your time. It's like, you need to do this or this or this. He started suggesting these like modular panels that like click together and have like quartz tubes and stuff in them. And I'm like, listen, I'm not building like an industrial grade kiln that's going to take up half my, like a 2-car garage. I just need something that sits on a bench like a shoebox almost, And he's like, well, you do what you want to, but I'm telling you right now, it's not going to work. Like, well, I've seen other guys do it, so I appreciate the advice, but, with all due respect, I think I'm going to try my way before I try your way. Because I had seen some of the things he was talking about on different websites, and it was very expensive. I mean, you're talking like thousands of dollars. I might as well just buy a Even Heat or a Paragon at that point. But, despite his best advice, I did it the way other guys were making them, or at least the way that I figured I could do it. And that oven worked for 12 years. So, I guess it worked, right? Did what I needed it to do. But, like I say, it's just kind of funny thinking about like how hard it was back then versus maybe now. Not that I didn't have to do some legwork. I still had to find a new supplier for some bricks here locally to me, which I couldn't be happier with the one I recently found. Mill CFS, by the way, if anybody's looking in this area. From start to finish, there was all the communication I needed. Shipping was fast, it was cheap, everything was individually boxed and wrapped and protected. Really impressed with them, and the prices were very reasonable as well. A little pricier than another supplier I had originally tried to deal with. Unfortunately, they shut their local distribution center down due to COVID-19 and market conditions. So they ended up not being an option any longer. But Mill CFS, if anybody's looking around here, check them out. But yeah, it was funny just kind of thinking back, trying to start knife making with like zero tools, zero knowledge, very few resources relative to today. Like I said, even the suppliers were few and far between. You had USA Knife Maker, you had Beaumont Metal Works, Jantz Knife Supply, you had Sheffield Knife Supply, which I think they're still around. You had to get like a paper catalog just to even order from them. They were all like mail orders, kind of funny. Never did order from them, but they were kind of the go-to back in the day for a lot of people. And, as far as the forums, there weren't nearly the resources or the knowledge that there is today. And even a lot of that has come and gone. But, I still wanted it bad enough, I did what I had to do, including just cold calling for fire breaks. So it was just fun, just kind of reminiscing about that. And, I figured I'd share that. Maybe some of you guys would get a kick out of that, especially, just thinking of that guy telling me, oh, that'll never work. Well, now I'm building my second oven, so maybe I wish I could remember who that even was. I probably would have tried to buy a few more bricks off him. But like I say, he acted like he was kind of inconvenienced anyway, like he didn't want to deal with it. But to his credit, he did, and I'm forever grateful. I mean, it got me started, and now maybe a little bit farther down the road than I was. But at any rate, we're closing in on 22 and a half minutes here, so I think I'll cut it off. And, I'll show you one other couple things I worked on tonight, just real quick. If anybody's made it this far, you get the bonus footage. Made a little extension bracket for my shop light there, so I can not have to worry when I tilt my grinder over. Normally I would mount that light to the grinder and it would want to fall over. And now I got it up here a little higher and more accessible. Much broader range than where I normally have it. And I can use it on my surface grinder. I can use it down here on my disc grinder as well. So that was one little project, real quick and dirty. And then the other thing I did, since I've recently moved this bench away from the wall where it was, I needed some additional circuits. So I ran a new outlet, 4-outlet box from my sub panel. So I could plug my no-weld grinder sander, and this is the one I was talking about. The first one I built. There's a second one I designed and built, and this one I still use quite a bit, believe it or not. It's a little on the clunky side. It's only 3 speeds. It ain't pretty to look at, but I think it's still a good design. I've made revisions and modifications over the years to improve it, but I think Tracy, he definitely did the world a service coming up with this, and I think you can still buy plans for it, even though there's a million other options nowadays. I think it's still a good one, and I'm still going to use it, at least until I build another one like that. Then maybe I'll pay this one forward, but still useful, and now I got a new outlet to plug it into, so that's it, guys. We'll keep this one right at 25 minutes. But that's this week. as far as shop updates and reminiscing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the story. But definitely stay tuned. Once I get this oven going at full capacity here, we're going to start getting into some knives again. And should be a little bit more content coming your way. So thanks for watching.